Welcome to those arriving on Zoom. I can see Bernadette and Stuart and Chris, Bev, Sui Matty have all arrived. Get a bit of feedback. Assuming I'll have to saw it. No, we're centered. Just admiring the shrine.
Thank you.
Chara there. Where are you?
I'm here, but not visually.
I see, we can only see the visual people.
Crikey. There's anything else there?
Okay, we've got the thumbs up.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Welcome, everybody. Yeah, so we make it a point to very rarely talk about the centre's finances. We've done that. We usually do it once a year. Well, we've always done it once a year in the autumn, and it's just about still autumn, so tonight's the night. But when I say we're going to talk about the centre's finances, actually, we're going to talk about something more important than that, because the finances are tied up with some really important principles behind the way that the centre and this community and this centre is run, which are important spiritual principles actually in their own right. So if you're fairly new to the centre, I really hope you've noticed that there's something a bit special about this place and this community. There's a sense of friendliness, shared community, part of being a sense of being part of a common project that people often comment on, people from other centres often comment on. And that spirit of community did not come about by accident. It came about because the conditions were put in place which create a spiritual community according to the Dharma as taught by the Buddha. So in the Pali Canon, the sort of earliest recorded teachings of the Buddha gives a list of 4 conditions which are needed to create a spiritual community. Another Buddhist list, you say. Well, you don't have to learn it all because I'm just going to talk about the first one, but it's sometimes called the four means of unification. And the first of these means of unification is dana, generosity. So following the teaching of the Buddha, we have tried to create a community based on generosity, an economy of generosity, what we call a dana economy. And this dana economy, I think, is probably the most important condition behind the sense of community that we have in Sheffield. It's really important because it makes us a community based on Buddhist principles rather than on market economics. It makes us a community rather than service providers and paying customers. And what the dana economy means in practice is that all Buddhist events at this centre, including even residential retreats where we have to hire a venue and sometimes a bus, they're all provided completely free of charge with absolutely no strings attached. And you might think, well, that's just the way it is, but actually most centres are not like that. Most centres are forced to charge for events. So we have this dana economy, this very unusual and precious dana economy. And this is made possible by three further conditions. So the first of these is the generosity of the people who teach at the centre and run events at the centre and keep the place running. So people either do that as volunteers for nothing, or they do it for ridiculously low levels of support. The average support for a full-time worker at the centre is £10,000 a year. That's what people like Bodhinaga, Aryadasa, the average is £10,000 a year. I think you'll agree they could earn a bit more. People work at the centre as part of their practice of generosity. The practice of generosity is regarded as really important in Buddhism. So it's, it's the Bodhisattva idea. We try to be contributing to the world. And that's how some people choose to do that. And it makes a big difference to a lot of people. So that's the first one, the people who work at the centre. The second condition that makes the dana economy possible is the many other people who give time, energy, skills, expertise, etc., as volunteers, working on maintenance teams, cleaning teams, in the garden, on the council, and so on. Doing things that otherwise we might have to pay for, except we would never have the money to pay for, so they just wouldn't get done. And then the third condition that makes it possible to offer all Buddhist events free of charge is the generosity of the many people who make regular donations to the centre by a standing order. That includes many of us here, some of us here. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, without you, none of that, the rest could happen. The rest just simply couldn't happen. It costs money to run something like this. So if you believe in what's going on here and feel part of this community, there are many, many ways you can contribute, many ways you can contribute. But one really important way to do that is to help support the centre financially. So if you don't already support the centre in that way, and if you have enough income, and if you want to, because dana is freely given, I would invite you to think seriously about making a regular donation to the centre. There is absolutely no obligation about this. Everyone is welcome to take part and benefit as fully as they like, with absolutely no obligation. So please don't feel under any pressure about that. But that is one important way, really important way, you can make a contribution to what's going on here. One way you can join in with this sort of shared mutual practice of generosity. One way you can symbolize, if you like, being part of this Sangha and make that more of a reality would be to make such a donation. So, as I said, there's absolutely no obligation. It's entirely up to you. Many people, there are many ways to give, but that is one really important way that people can help if you want to, if you're in a position to do so. So when we make that invitation once a year, people often ask, how much are you talking about? There is absolutely no right answer to that. that. At the moment, standing orders range from £2 a month to £150 a month. So it could be so little you would be very hard pressed to notice it, or it could be quite a lot of money. It's entirely, the average is about 30. So if you're thinking about it, you could ask yourself how much you value this centre and the Sangha and the Dharma compared to, say, a night out every month, or gym membership, or a phone subscription. You could ask that. But any amount would be helpful. And as I say, there is absolutely no obligation to give anything whatsoever. Events are free at this centre. So some of us here already support the centre in that way. And I'll repeat what I said before, thank you. You're making a really important contribution to this community. If you're in a position to do so, you might want to think about increasing your donation a bit to make up for really rapidly rising costs. So most Buddhist centres, most Triratna Buddhist centres recognize, in my experience, recognize the Dharma economy, like the one we have in Sheffield, is really the way things should be run. But very few have managed to achieve it. Most run by charging for classes and events. It was a real struggle to get it established here in Sheffield. It took some leaps of faith. It's an achievement. It's an achievement to have created it. And it's always a bit precarious. So we shouldn't take it for granted. So if you support the ideals that the Dharma economy embodies, please do think seriously about how you can contribute to making it work if you have any spare resources whatsoever. So if you think you might want to make a regular donation to the centre by setting up a standing order or to increase an old one, we've got some various things here. We've got some pledge forms and we've got some gift day, we've got some pledge forms and various other forms which will be available to you. Or you can set up a standing order online. But please do, if you do take one out, if you do set up a standing order, please do tell the centre about it because, well, that helps us to know how we're getting on. And also, we can check that the donations are actually being made by the bank because they don't always. So, yeah, thank you for listening and do think about it. And I think Bodhinaga will remind you of the possibility at the end of his talk. Thank you very much. So I'll hand over to Bodhinaga.
Thank you very much for Daniel. Yeah. And we've put some forms just on a table outside the door. So as you're leaving, if someone might need to remind me to remind you at the end that that's where they are as you're leaving, there's forms and pens just on a table outside and a display down in the corridor as well. Okay. It's not switched on. Thank you for reminding me about the mic. Where have I put it? So it's switched on now. Good. So hopefully you heard that the forms are just outside and pens just outside the exit there. Okay. So our series at the moment is Attitudes of Enlightenment. And we've been exploring the 7 stages of the sevenfold puja. And we've been explaining that the sevenfold puja, it's a series, it's a practice with a series of devotional states, devotional moods, and they're progressive moods, and they are the conditions that, it's a practice that creates the conditions that give rise to the bodhicitta. And the bodhicitta is the enlightened mind, it's the heart or mind of the bodhisattva. So it's a very powerful practice, the sevenfold puja, and we do it collectively, maybe once every few months at Sangha Night, at festivals, so the sevenfold puja is the practice we're exploring at Sangha Night, but not just as a ritual practice. It's also, we're exploring these as 7 attitudes of a bodhisattva, 7 attitudes of enlightenment that we need to be cultivating, not just once every few months in a ritual, but every day in our lives. So each week we've been exploring one of these 7 attitudes and exploring them both in the puja and how we cultivate that in our daily life and the value of that as well. So this evening, I'm going to be looking at the sixth penultimate stage of the sevenfold puja, the stage of entreaty and supplication. So I'm going to read the verses of this stage. It's just a short section, so I'll read the verses. Saluting them with folded hands, I entreat the Buddhas in all the quarters. May they make shine the lamp of the Dharma for those wandering in the suffering of delusion. With hands folded in reverence, I implore the conquerors desiring to enter nirvana. May they remain here for endless ages, so that life in this world does not grow dark. So when I've been talking about these stages myself, one thing I've been keen to encourage is that when you do this as a practice in the ritual, try and enter into that emotional stage, try and engage with it emotionally. And this is an unusual stage emotionally to try and pin down. For me, it often feels slightly precarious, as Vidanya described our Sangha and our Dharma economy. It's like, this feels like with this stage of the puja, it's like, well, we've got the Dharma, but we might not always have it. And we're entreating the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to keep the Dharma available so that this world doesn't grow dark. It uses both the analogy of light for the Dharma, light for wisdom and truth, but also you get the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as the source of that light. So it's an entreaty, it's kind of pleading with the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, don't let this world grow dark, don't leave samsara. So quite a strange emotional state actually to cultivate in the puja. And I'll say more about the state. That's going to be the talk this evening. So we're in this stage, this stage of the puja, we're asking for the Dharma, we're asking for a Dharma teaching. And then immediately following that request, we usually hear read out a teaching from the Buddha. It's called Buddha Vachana, the voice of the Buddha. So usually it'll be a reading from either the Buddha or another enlightened teaching. And we receive then the Dharma, we receive a teaching. And then after that, we hear the Heart Sutra, which is quite a mysterious and very difficult to fathom teaching. So this evening, I want to talk about these three aspects: the request for the teaching, the receiving the Dharma text through the reading, and then the Heart Sutra that we recite in unison in the puja, and how that translates to daily life, our attitude in daily life. So it might seem a bit odd that we're asking the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to teach us. And it's important to stress, it's not that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas need to be asked. It's not that they won't teach the Dharma, or the Dharma won't be made available unless we ask nicely for the Buddhas to teach us. It's not how that works. The emphasis is more on us being open to the teaching, wanting to receive teaching. It's a way of trying to get our ego out of the way and be in a position to receive the teaching. So it's not just asking, it's about the attitude that we have towards the asking. So to illustrate this, I want to tell a story, a traditional Buddhist story. And it's a story of a professor who goes to a monk and asks for wisdom teaching. So he goes to the monastery, he asks the monk, I want to receive a wisdom teaching. And so the monk, what the monk does, he takes out a teapot, which I've got water, and he starts to pour tea for the professor. I don't know if you can see this on. He just starts to pour tea for the professor, and the professor's waiting for the teaching, and the monk just carries on pouring the tea, and the professor's still waiting, just carries on pouring the tea, and the cup's overflowing with tea. Eventually, the professor just cries out, "Stop! Stop! The cup is full. Stop pouring. The cup is full." And I managed to do that without spilling the water, which is a bonus. And so the professor's shouting out, panicking, "The cup is full. Stop pouring." And the monk says, "Well, your mind is like the cup. Your mind is full. I can't give you a teaching because your mind is full." And I'm just going to very carefully put this down again. Last time I did something like this at Sangha Night, there was water everywhere, but not tonight. Yeah, so the monk says to the professor, well, your mind is full, your mind is like this. You're asking for a teaching, but I can't teach you. So I think this is the essence of this stage of the puja of entreaty and supplication. It's not just that we want to receive teachings. It's the manner of our attitude towards that. Are we really open to learning? Are we open to change? Are we open to hearing and being challenged by the Dharma? Or do we just want the Dharma to kind of shore up our sense of ourselves and not challenge us? It's this attitude. Are we receptive? So that's a key word for this evening, receptivity. Are we receptive to receiving a teaching? Are we open to learning, open to change, open to transformation? Because the danger is and particularly in our culture where we've got very, very good standards of education and literacy, we arrive at the Buddhist center, we make contact with the Dharma, and we kind of know so much already. And we're like, if we're not careful, we're like this professor our minds are just full, and we think we know already everything. We know everything already. So what space is there? What room is there for the Dharma to? That's the danger of our predicament. We arrive at the Buddhist center full already of ideas and concepts. I don't know a lot of Socrates' teaching, but one that has stayed with me that I heard, which I assume is accurate, is that Socrates said he was wise because he knew that he doesn't know. Socrates said, "I know that I don't know," and I think that's you have to be wise to know that you don't know. To really realize that we don't understand, and it takes courage and bravery to admit I don't know. And it's really kind of question, what do I actually know? I might have a lot of concepts, a lot of knowledge, but what do I really know? And Socrates said his wisdom came from him knowing that he doesn't know. I think that's particularly appropriate at the moment as well, because there's lots of debate and heated debate in society, and people just think they know. Everybody assumes that they know, and do we really know? There needs to be humility both in life and in the Dharma. We don't know, and we need to approach the Dharma with that attitude. We don't know. We want to learn. So then, if we approach it in that attitude, particularly in the puja, then we receive ritually a teaching. We receive the Buddha Vachana, the voice of the Buddha. So usually there'll be a text that's read out. And hopefully at that stage in the puja, we've created the conditions where we're able to receive and reflect and for that teaching to go in. And it's the same in our Dharma life. We need to approach Dharma texts in that way, that we're open to learning from them and to being changed by them, to really take them in. So it's worth reflecting on, are you doing that in your life? Are you reflecting on the Dharma? Do you create space in your mind, in your heart, in your life to reflect on the Dharma, to take it in? And there's a phrase I think comes from Zen Buddhism, is beginner's mind, and that is really, really important. I don't know if you can remember, and some of you are quite new to the Buddhist Center, it might be easier for you to remember. What is it like when you first meet the Dharma? How exciting it is, and how wholeheartedly you just engage with the teachings, and how much you change, how much your life changes in that state. You're just really receptive, really fresh. You just bring a fresh, open mind to the Dharma and to meditation, and it has really transformative effects. But after a while, we can get a bit comfortable. We get a bit comfortable with the Dharma. We feel like we know the Dharma. Our life is a bit comfortable. Are we as open to change? Are we as open to the kind of radical teachings of the Dharma? Our lives being turned upside down, maybe by the Dharma, being challenged by the Dharma. So that's a question. That is a question maybe to reflect on. Can you remember those experiences of beginner's mind? Maybe when you first met the Dharma. Something to reflect on. So we need the Dharma. We arrive at the Dharma full of ideas, full of concepts, and they're not always that helpful in terms of making sense of life and navigating through life. We arrive often at the Dharma with wrong ideas about life, wrong views is the kind of traditional term. We have wrong views about reality, about the way things work, and that's what causes our suffering. We just kind of bang into reality again and again, and we can't really understand what's happening. We can't make sense of what's happening. And what the Dharma gives us is right views. It gives us concepts, ideas, practices that help us to make sense of our experience, help us to navigate through our experience. And there's the analogy that we sometimes use of a map. It's like we're given a map. It helps us to navigate our experience. And maybe to begin with, the map is faulty. It doesn't help us to navigate so well. But we get a more accurate map. The Dharma gives us concepts and ideas, practices that just help to make sense of our experience and of reality. And the Buddha likened it to a raft. He said, well, we're on a journey through life, and also a journey to, this like a dangerous journey to cross a river, a raging river. And that's the kind of the Buddhist path of transformation, is to kind of cross this river and to get to the safety of the further shore. And to do that, we need a raft. We need solid, reliable raft that we can set out onto this journey with. And the Buddha likened the Dharma to this. It's like we're given a reliable, seaworthy raft, rather than maybe the kind of less seaworthy, less reliable raft that we arrive at the Dharma with. We get a more robust set of ideas and concepts and practices. So that was the metaphor that the Buddha used of the raft. So the Dharma is obviously really, really important. That goes without saying. We just get these reliable concepts that just make sense, that help us to transform ourselves, help to make sense of our experience. And we suffer less because of that. But there's a danger here that even at the time of the Buddha stressed and noticed that people often have a tendency just to get obsessed with the raft, with the teachings, and they really get obsessed with making adjustments to the raft and really being very meticulous about how the raft is constructed. Is this particular raft better than that other particular raft? Which is the right raft? If we're not careful, that just is another way of being comfortable, not actually setting sail, not voyaging out onto this kind of journey of transformation. We just use the concepts and kind of debate the concepts, get obsessed with studying the concepts, but don't actually put them into practice, don't actually transform ourselves. We're not receptive to change. So this obviously took place at the time of the Buddha as well, because the Buddha used this parable or this metaphor of the raft and said, well, we need the raft to cross the river. But then as soon as we reach the other shore, we abandon the raft. The raft is a means to an end. The Dharma, the teachings, the practices, Buddhism itself is a means to an end. When I first heard this, I remember find that really exciting and liberating, but also kind of ridiculous as well. Like this whole religion that I'm committing my life to, that's not it. It's like it's a means to all these practices. They're a means to transform me into a different state of consciousness where I will experience the truth. And once I experience the truth, like they've done their job in a way. It's like so. I don't know if I've done justice to expressing that, but it's quite radical to think that in a way we just hope. And I suppose it stops us to getting too fundamental about the Dharma in a way, and getting too dogmatic about the Dharma, taking it too literally, holding on too tightly to the Dharma, because it's always provisional. Our understanding of it is always provisional. We're never going to fully understand the Dharma. It's always deeper and deeper that we can understand it. So our current understanding is always provisional. But then ultimately the Dharma itself is provisional. It's a means to an end. And there is, there's a metaphor that I think again comes from Zen Buddhism of a finger pointing to the moon. And the Dharma is said to be like the finger, which is pointing to enlightenment. My finger's pointing at Edward at the moment, but a good start. So I can point also at the Buddha over here. And the thing, so the Dharma is a finger. It's pointing us, it's leading us in a direction of transformation and growth, where we can experience what the Buddha experienced for ourselves. But the Dharma is what the practice is, the teachings that the Buddha gave us, so we can experience that for ourselves. And it's pointing, the concepts themselves are pointing towards something, but the concept is not, it is important to understand the concepts, but that's not what wisdom is. Wisdom isn't understanding the concepts, and that's a mistake we might make in our culture. It's not understanding the concepts doesn't make us wise. Wisdom comes through living by these teachings and practices and transforming our consciousness. So we have the entreaty, we have the request for teaching, then we get the Dharma, we get the teaching, And then we get the Heart Sutra. So I'm going to briefly give just a very, very quick like headlines of the Heart Sutra in a way, kind of tour of the Heart Sutra, because I haven't got a lot of time this evening. So I'm going to just give a brief introduction to the Heart Sutra, and hopefully you've encountered the Heart Sutra before, but if not, you'll know what to look out for when you encounter it in a ritual, in a puja. So the Heart Sutra, we chant in unison in the puja after we hear the Buddha Vachana, the word of the Buddha. And it's not, what's great about the Heart Sutra, it's really hard to understand. It doesn't really appear to make sense. So it can kind of, it's like baffles our rational mind. I read this morning, it's aimed to torpedo the rational mind. It's kind of get us out of that state where the professor's in, where we think we know. So we get out of that state of thinking that we know, closer to that state of Socrates was talking about, where we realize we don't know and we're receptive. Our mind is receptive. So the Heart Sutra kind of pulls the rug from underneath the rational mind. And I'll explain a little bit about how that works. But it's interesting, it begins with Avalokiteshvara, who's the Bodhisattva of compassion. We've got Avalokiteshvara Tanka up here from Sangha Day still on our shrine. And Avalokiteshvara is a Bodhisattva of compassion, not the Bodhisattva of wisdom, the Bodhisattva of compassion. So in a way, maybe that evokes us, reminds us of the Bodhicitta, the heart, the wisdom, the mind of the Bodhisattva. But the Heart Sutra begins with Avalokiteshvara meditating deeply and seeing the emptiness of 5 skandhas, all 5 skandhas, and sundering the bonds that caused him suffering. And this is apparently a dialogue between Avalokiteshvara and Shariputra. Shariputra is one of the Buddha's historical disciples who is associated with scholarly learning. So maybe this is like another archetype of the professor. Shariputra often gets a lot of this unfair treatment because he was an enlightened disciple, but he's a kind of caricature of the person who knows everything. So Avalokiteshvara is in dialogue with Shariputra, and the Bodhisattva of compassion, he sees the emptiness. Shunyata is a word, shunya. It gets translated as emptiness, which isn't ideal, but we'll go with that. He sees the emptiness of the 5 skandhas. The 5 skandhas is a Buddhist list, which is a way of dividing up our experience, dividing up reality into the form that reality takes, the Vedana, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, our volitional choices, our consciousness, and our heart and our mind, our kind of chitta. So it divides, Buddhism divides experience up into these 5 categories, 5 heaps, 5 skandhas. And Avalokiteshvara just sees that they're all shunya, they're all empty. And it's not just that, the Heart Sutra goes on to say, well, all things are empty, all things are shunya, all phenomena are shunya. All things can't fit into the duality of being born and destroyed, stained or pure, waxing or waning. And then he goes through the sutra, Avalokiteshvara in the sutra, just goes through pretty much everything you can think of and says, well, it's shunya, it's empty. And all our sense experience, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, colour, sound, taste, touch, the mind objects, they're all empty. Even the act of sensing is empty. And then he goes on to look at the Buddhist teachings, the Buddhist concepts that we cling to so dearly, the raft that sometimes we want to stay on this shore with and not travel with. And he takes them apart as well, Avalokiteshvara as well. There's no ignorance, there's no end of it, there's nothing that comes of ignorance, there's no death, there's no end of death, there's no Four Noble Truths, there's no Eightfold Path, there's not even wisdom to attain, there's not even attainment. All of these are empty. So that's in a way, maybe that's the kind of torpedoing that I read about this morning of the Heart Sutra. So all of these ideas, all of these concepts, well, that's what they are, they're concepts. They're a map helping us to navigate our life and our experience. Really helpful map, really useful, accurate map that kind of shows how reality works. But it's just a map, they're just concepts. They're not ultimately more than concepts. They're not, the Dharma, the wisdom is deeper than concepts. It's non-conceptual at its deepest level. And the concepts take us so far, but then they're just ideas, they're just concepts. So the Heart Sutra comes from a tradition of Buddhism called the Prajna Paramita, which sometimes gets translated as perfection, which isn't ideal again, but Prajna, wisdom, paramitar. You might remember from our last series, Ways to the Beyond, the Bodhisattva trainings were called paramitars, ways to the beyond. So this is wisdom from beyond that kind of duality. It's the wisdom of the Bodhisattva, transcendent wisdom. And the Heart Sutra comes from this tradition. And in the Heart Sutra, in this tradition, there's this perfection of wisdom in 1,000 lines, 8,000 lines, 100,000 lines. There's the Heart Sutra, and there's perfection of wisdom in just one word, which is not. That's the perfection of wisdom in one word, not. So it's like whatever you think reality is not that, because we can't think it, we can't conceptualize the truth or reality. So the perfection of wisdom in one word is just not. And again, it's easy to say, and it can, I can think I understand it, but then that's the danger we fall into, is then we become the professor, thinking we understand it, thinking that we know. So I'm just going to revert to my notes temporarily. Oops. Some wet pledge forms. Yeah, so we've got a map, we've got a really helpful map of reality, which the Dharma gives us, which helps us to make sense of reality. And we need that. We need shared language, we need concepts, we need reliable ones that actually work and make sense of our experience. So we need an accurate map rather than a faulty map that's going to cause us suffering. And this is what in Perfection of Wisdom is called conventional reality, conventional truth. It's a kind of convention that we share between us, that there are tables, desks, microphones, Zoom. But a year ago there wasn't Zoom, it didn't exist, and now there's Zoom. So these concepts, like, they seem really permanent, but they're just conventional concepts, and it's the conventional reality that we kind of occupy. But then Perfection of Wisdom says, well, there's an absolute reality, which is that all these concepts are empty of absolute reality. So the map we have is reliable, but it's not the same as being in the place. You can have a map of Paris and you can see, oh yeah, that's where the Eiffel Tower is and that's where the Notre Dame is, but it's not the same as actually being in Paris and visiting these places and sampling. It's not the same. So that's what the Heart Sutra, in a way, and the Perfection of Wisdom is trying to pull the rug under. The concepts are really helpful, but don't get, in a way, don't mistake the finger for the moon. So the finger is the Dharma is trying to point us towards enlightenment. We get obsessed with the finger, we get obsessed with the raft, we get obsessed with the concepts, but they're trying to lead us towards a state of being and an understanding of reality, which isn't conceptual, goes beyond concepts. So the map is really, really important, but it's not the same as the experience of reality itself. Yeah, so there's a danger that can come with this, and you do encounter Buddhists who fall into this trap. Is okay, well, that means the Heart Sutra saying, the Perfection of Wisdom saying, there's no Noble Eightfold Path, there's no Four Noble Truths, there's no wisdom. So the concepts, in a way, there's just a danger we just forget the concepts. We just throw the map away, because the Heart Sutra is telling us the map isn't it, and what we want is a wisdom. We don't want the thing that isn't a wisdom. So the danger is we just chuck the map away, because and just fool ourselves that we're just abiding in reality, a kind of conceptless reality. We can't just leap from our current state into a kind of conceptless experience of reality. We need the training, we need the Dharma, we need the map, we need the raft, and we need to really engage with it, with the receptivity where we can be transformed. So there's a level of receptivity initially, just knowing that we don't know, and then being open to the teachings of the Dharma. And we need that. We can't just abandon that. That's the danger, that we just think, okay, well, the concepts are useless, sorry, just abandon them. Particularly things like ethics. Ethics is empty, so I don't need to be ethical. I just need to be aware. I don't need to transform myself. So there's a danger we just abandon the Dharma and abandon the concepts. And so hopefully if you're around this Sangha and this centre, you won't fall into that trap. But really what we're looking to do is to be receptive initially to the concepts of the Dharma, and really be receptive to being changed and challenged and transformed by the Dharma. But then also we're looking to be, to see the limit, hold that provisionally and lightly, and we're looking to be receptive to the wisdom that isn't conceptual. And maybe this is where we can revisit the image of the light of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that we are calling on, that light that brings, without which there would be darkness, samsara would be in darkness. Like, what is the source of the wisdom? Where does the wisdom come from and the light? And this might be strange for us in our culture to get to kind of digest in a way this idea, but where does wisdom come from? Is it something I make through understanding ideas, or is it something that arises when I'm in the right kind of state of mind, a kind of clarity of mind, or an ethical state of mind, a purer state of mind? And it's my experience, I have to be careful what I say, like it's in my experience and in the Buddhist tradition, it's more likely that wisdom arises, everything arises when you create the conditions for it. It's not just wisdom, anything arises depending on conditions. And what the sevenfold puja, the stages of the sevenfold puja are, they're creating the conditions where wisdom can arise. It's emotional devotion and reverence and of the first stages, the commitment to going for refuge, there's the ethical purification, there's the positive emotion and identification with others in the rejoicing section we heard about last week. They're all creating the conditions where our mind, our consciousness can be receptive to wisdom arising. And when it does arise, it feels more like it's something that's coming from outside, not something that is my wisdom. We talked about inviting the enlightened mind. Well, that's the phrase we use at the start of our puja, in order to invite the enlightened mind. So the enlightened mind, the bodhicitta, wisdom and compassion is something we're creating the conditions. That's what it feels like. That's the experience, that we are creating the conditions to invite this state, the bodhicitta, to arise. Yeah, so there's being receptive and realizing we don't know, having beginner's mind. There's being receptive to the Dharma and engaging with that. And then there's being receptive to something beyond that, the enlightened mind, the bodhicitta. And again, it can seem quite maybe passive that we're being receptive to something else, but actually there's a whole lot of work goes into that transformation, into creating those conditions, cultivating the positive emotions, cultivate, the ethical transformation of our consciousness. There's a whole lot of work that goes into that. But the culmination of the puja and the Dharma life is that we don't need the raft anymore. We've used the raft. We've really got a very sound raft. We've gone across the river on the raft. And the Buddha says you don't then kind of carry the raft around with you on your head. The raft's done, you leave the raft then. You don't need the raft. So when we use concepts, then we take concepts to their limit, and they can lead us beyond concepts to whatever lies beyond concepts, to the wisdom, to the bodhicitta. So without trying to say more of things that I don't know, so much about, I will just read a bit of the Heart Sutra that evokes this for Avalokiteshvara and the Bodhisattvas. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. Hear then the great dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the prajna paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe its truth. Gate, gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhi swaha, which can translate as gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond. How wonderful. So I've got some soggy pledge forms on the floor, but we've got lots of fresh pledge forms outside. Just want to just remind you of what Vidanya spoke about at the start of the talk, in case you arrived late or need a reminder, just that we rely on people's generosity to run this centre. And both